All right, let's dive in. This time, we're looking at something pretty huge, something that could change, well, pretty much everything.
Yeah, we're talking about the future, like the big future.
Exactly. And guiding us through this deep dive is Mustafa Suleyman's book, The Coming Wave. He argues that this future might feel less like a gentle swell, more like a tsunami.
More like getting slammed by tech, you know?
Exactly. It's AI, synthetic biology, all that stuff that simultaneously makes you think, wow, that's awesome, and uh-oh, should we be doing this?
That double-edged sword,
Whoa.
right? The potential is huge, but so are the risks.
It's like, think back to the invention of the wheel, the printing press, even the internet. Those were game changers.
Massive shifts.
Yeah. But Suleyman is saying this next wave is even bigger. He argues it's not just another upgrade, it's a total reshaping of, well, everything.
The way we live, work, even think. It's a fundamental change to how the world works.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The book dives into how we can, and this is his word, contain this wave. Not stop progress, but understand how to control these incredibly powerful technologies.
And this is key. He's not talking about resisting technology like those Luddites smashing up looms back in the day.
Yeah, good point. Technology always seems to find a way, doesn't it?
He argues it's like a force of nature, almost impossible to stop. You can't just, put it back in the box.
So if we can't stop it, what can we do?
That's the question. And believe it or not, there's one example that gives us a sliver of hope.
Nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons. Really, that seems like the opposite of hope.
I know, right? But think about it, it's the closest we've come to successful containment.
Okay, I'm listening.
Building nukes is complex, expensive, and frankly, terrifying. Plus, we have international treaties, maybe a bit of luck on our side, that have, for the most part, kept them under control.
I guess so.
But the key takeaway is this. Even with nukes, containment isn't perfect, and AI and bioengineering are spreading much faster, and they're much more accessible. That's a scary thought. So are you saying that this wave is just too big to handle, that we're going to get swept away?
Not necessarily. Suleyman believes that we have a chance, but it's going to require a radical shift in our thinking.
A shift in thinking. How so?
Well, he compares this wave to the Cambrian explosion, that period of rapid biological diversification, like boom, all these new life forms just appearing.
That's a pretty wild comparison.
But it makes sense. Just like that period, we're seeing an explosion of new tech, driven by AI, synthetic biology, robotics, and they're all converging and evolving at an insane pace.
It's almost like we're creating our own Cambrian explosion, but with technology instead of life forms.
Yeah, and just as scientists couldn't predict exactly what creatures would emerge from the Cambrian explosion, we can't fully grasp the societal changes this tech wave will bring.
That's a pretty unsettling thought. I mean, we're already seeing AI do things that seemed impossible just a few years ago.
Oh, absolutely. Like, remember DeepMind's DQN algorithm? The one that taught itself to play Breakout, that old arcade game?
Oh yeah, the one that figured out how to win by tunneling through the wall.
Exactly. And it wasn't just playing the game, it was innovating. It developed strategies no human had ever thought of.
That's both impressive and a little bit terrifying. Like, if AI can figure out how to cheat at Breakout, what else can it figure out?
And that's just one example. Think about computer vision, the tech behind self-driving cars and facial recognition.
Yeah, that's advanced at an insane speed.
Remember AlexNet? That breakthrough by Geoffrey Hinton?
Vaguely.
Well, that was a turning point. It's like somebody poured gasoline on a bonfire. Suddenly, computer vision was capable of things we'd only dreamed of before.
And now it's everywhere. It's in our phones, our cars, even our supermarkets.
It's practically inescapable. And let's not forget about large language models, those LLMs everyone's talking about. I mean, GPT-4 can write poetry, generate code, translate languages. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it feels like every few months, there's a new version of GPT that's even more powerful than the last.
It's evolving at warp speed. Remember that Google engineer who became convinced that LaMDA, Google's language model, was sentient?
Yeah, that was a wild story. It turned out LaMDA wasn't actually conscious, but it was convincing enough to fool an expert.
And that's the point. AI systems are becoming so advanced that they can blur the lines between machine and human.
It's like something straight out of a sci-fi novel. And Suleyman takes it even further with this concept of artificially capable intelligence, or ACI, which is basically an AI that can operate in the real world, not just in a computer.
This is where it gets really interesting. Imagine an AI that can understand complex goals, plan actions, use tools, and learn from experience. That's an ACI, and it has the potential to revolutionize everything, from medicine to transportation.
It sounds amazing, but also a little bit scary. What if those ACIs fall into the wrong hands? What if they're used for nefarious purposes? If AI is already this powerful, what happens when it becomes capable of acting in the real world?
That's exactly what we're going to explore next. So where we left off, we were talking about the mind-blowing potential of AI and how it's like exploding all around us.
Yeah, it feels like every day there's a new headline about some AI doing something incredible, or maybe a little scary, depending on how you look at it.
And the big question that Suleyman grapples with is, can we actually control this power? Can we contain this wave? And he makes a pretty compelling case for why that might be harder than we think.
Yeah, I felt like that Unstoppable Incentives chapter was like a cold shower. Suddenly, it's not just about the amazing possibilities, it's about the forces driving this technology, forces we might not be able to control.
Exactly. And one of the biggest drivers is this new kind of global competition, a Cold War. But instead of nukes, it's AI and bioengineering.
So, like, every country is racing to be the leader in these fields.
Yeah, nobody wants to be left behind. And it makes sense. The stakes are enormous. We're talking about trillions of dollars, whole new industries, products, services. The economic incentives are astronomical.
Okay, so there's the fear of falling behind, and then there's the potential for massive profits.
It's a potent combination. And the problem is, when profit becomes the only driving force, things like safety and ethics can get pushed aside.
It's like in the rush to be first, to make the most money, people forget to ask, hang on, should we actually be doing this?
And Suleyman uses this term, Googleization, to describe how these massive tech companies are becoming so powerful that they're starting to rival nation states in terms of their influence.
It's kind of scary to think about. Like Google, Amazon, these companies have so much data, wealth, control over essential services. Their decisions impact every aspect of our lives.
And as these technologies advance, that power is only going to grow.
So it's not just about governments anymore. These tech giants are major players in shaping the future.
Exactly. And Suleyman argues that this concentration of power in the hands of a few is a major risk we need to address.
Okay, so we've got this intense global competition, the profit motive in overdrive. What else is pushing this wave forward at such a breakneck speed?
Well, Suleyman talks about the openness imperative, this idea that scientific knowledge should be shared freely. It's like ingrained in the culture of science and technology.
Yeah, collaboration, open source software, all that.
Yeah.
It's what drives innovation.
But when you're dealing with powerful technologies like AI and gene editing, that openness can also be a liability.
Because that information can be used for good or for bad.
Precisely. It's incredibly difficult to control who accesses that information and what they do with it.
So even if we have the best intentions, we can't guarantee that everyone else will.
And then on top of all that, there's the most human element of all, ego.
Ego. I get how that fuels ambition and competition, but how does that play into this whole tech race?
Well, think about the scientists, the engineers, the entrepreneurs pushing the boundaries of what's possible. They're driven by curiosity, by the desire to make a mark on the world, to be the first, to achieve something groundbreaking.
Yeah, I guess that's what drives innovation.
But it can also lead to a kind of tunnel vision, a focus on the what, without enough consideration for the what if.
It's like they're so focused on reaching the summit that they don't see the potential for falling off the cliff.
And with these powerful technologies, the potential consequences of those falls are, well, pretty terrifying.
So we've got this perfect storm of forces driving this wave. Geopolitical competition, the profit motive, a culture of openness, and good old-fashioned human ambition.
It's a complex web of factors, and it's what makes containing this wave so incredibly challenging.
Okay, let's say we can't contain it. This wave breaks loose, sweeps us all away. What does that world look like? What are the specific risks that Suleyman is warning us about?
He doesn't sugarcoat it. He believes that this wave could fundamentally reshape society, and not always for the better. He talks about the potential for AI-enabled warfare, disinformation campaigns, even the accidental release of engineered pathogens.
I mean, we just went through a pandemic. The thought of an engineered pathogen getting out is, well, terrifying.
And those are just a few of the risks. He also talks about mass unemployment as AI and automation replace human workers across various industries.
So it's not just blue-collar jobs that are at risk, it's white-collar jobs too.
Lawyers, doctors, accountants, even programmers, nobody's immune.
This is starting to feel pretty apocalyptic. It's like everything we know about society, about work, about life, it's all up for grabs.
It's definitely a time of profound change and uncertainty. But amidst all the warnings, Suleyman does offer some hope. He believes that we still have a chance to steer this wave, to guide these technologies towards a more positive future.
So it's not all doom and gloom. There's still something we can do.
Yeah, he lays out a multi-layered approach to containment, focusing on 9 key areas. He calls them the 9 pillars of containment. It's like a roadmap for navigating this coming wave.
9 pillars. That sounds pretty comprehensive. Let's dive into that in the next part.
Okay, so we've talked about this massive technological wave that's about to break and all the forces that are making it almost impossible to stop.
Yeah, it's like we're standing on the beach, watching this tsunami approach, and we can't just wish it away. Exactly. But as we just discussed, Suleyman doesn't think we're completely powerless. He believes there are things we can do, steps we can take to navigate this wave, maybe even steer it in a more positive direction.
Right, he lays out a pretty comprehensive plan, a multi-layered approach to containment. He calls them the 9 pillars of containment.
9 pillars. That sounds like a lot to unpack. Maybe we can focus on a few of the key ones.
Sure, absolutely. One of the most important pillars is technical safety.
So like making the technology itself safer.
Exactly. Building in safeguards from the very beginning, not as an afterthought. It's about anticipating potential risks and designing systems that are inherently more resistant to misuse.
So it's not just about controlling who has access to the technology. It's about making sure the technology itself is less likely to be used for harmful purposes.
Exactly. And another key pillar is independent auditing.
So like having independent experts come in and assess the safety and integrity of these systems.
Yeah, think of it like the checks and balances we have in government. We need similar mechanisms to ensure that companies and researchers are acting responsibly, that they're prioritizing safety and ethics, not just profits and progress.
Okay, so technical safety, independent auditing. What else?
Suleyman also talks about identifying and controlling what he calls choke points.
Choke points.
Yes, these are like the critical resources and infrastructure that are essential for developing and deploying these technologies. Things like access to advanced semiconductors, rare earth minerals, the kind of stuff that you can't just get anywhere.
So by controlling the supply of these critical components, we can slow down the development of potentially dangerous technologies, kind of like applying the brakes.
Exactly. It's about buying ourselves some time, giving us a chance to assess the risks, to put safeguards in place, to make sure we're not rushing headlong into something we might regret later.
That makes sense. But controlling these choke points would require a lot of international cooperation, right?
Absolutely. It's not something any one country can do on its own. We need to work together to share information, to coordinate our efforts.
And speaking of cooperation, Suleyman also stresses the importance of fostering a culture of responsibility among scientists and engineers.
Oh yeah, this is huge. He argues that we need to shift the mindset to encourage researchers and developers to think about the ethical implications of their work from the very beginning.
It's not just about building cool new stuff, it's about building stuff that's safe and beneficial for society.
It's about moving away from that move fast and break things mentality that's been so prevalent in the tech industry.
Yeah, when you're dealing with technologies this powerful, breaking things can have some pretty serious consequences.
So it's about slowing down, being more thoughtful, considering the potential risks as well as the potential benefit.
It's about being responsible stewards of these incredible technologies.
And that responsibility extends beyond the scientific community. Suleyman argues that governments also have a critical role to play.
Okay, what can governments do?
Well, for one thing, they need to invest heavily in research and development.
So not just funding basic research, but also funding research specifically focused on the safe and ethical development of these technologies.
Right. And governments need to build up their own expertise in these areas so they can understand the risks and develop effective policies and regulations.
It's not enough to just react to what's happening in the tech world. They need to be proactive to anticipate potential problems and develop solutions.
Exactly. And governments also need to work together to collaborate on international agreements and standards.
Yeah, because technology doesn't stop at borders.
Right. So we need to have a global conversation to share knowledge and coordinate our efforts to ensure that these technologies are developed and used in a way that benefits everyone.
So it's not just about individual scientists or individual companies or even individual countries. It's about all of us working together.
Exactly. And that includes the public. Suleyman emphasizes the importance of public awareness and engagement.
So it's not just about leaving it to the experts.
No, he believes that everyone needs to be informed about these issues, to participate in the conversation, to hold those in power accountable.
So what can ordinary people do? What can our listeners do?
Well, first and foremost, get informed, read Suleyman's book, do your own research, Learn about these technologies and the potential risks and benefits.
Okay, so educate ourselves. What then?
Then, engage in the conversation. Talk to your friends and family. Share what you've learned. Write to your elected officials. Support organizations that are working on these issues.
It's about making our voices heard, making sure that the development and deployment of these technologies reflects our values, our hopes, our fears.
It's about shaping the future we want, not just passively accepting the future that's handed to us.
So this coming wave, it's going to be a wild ride. But it's not a ride we have to take blindly.
We have a choice. We can choose to be passive passengers, or we can choose to grab the wheel and steer towards a better future.
That's a powerful message, and it's one that I think we all need to hear. So to everyone listening, I encourage you to check out Suleyman's book, The Coming Wave. It's a challenging read, but it's also incredibly important.
It's a wake-up call, a reminder that the future is not predetermined. It's something we create collectively through our choices and actions.
So let's make sure we're making the right choices. Let's work together to shape a future where these powerful technologies are used to benefit humanity, not harm it.
Absolutely. The future is in our hands. Let's make it a good one.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep shaping the future.